And welcome to Medicine and Science, only on the Pod TV network. And today we're going to be discussing misinformation in medicine, specifically three groups that appear on LinkedIn. We're on LinkedIn also, but these three groups have really caught my attention, and I'm not really sure how legitimate they are. One is called the Children's Health Defense. Now, if you look at the name, who could object to that? Defending children through your health. Okay, I mean, looks good. But just like what they call front or scam, you got to go look underneath and see what's behind it. But it appears to be an anti-vax group. I mean, it doesn't matter. They just hate vaccines, even if they work. They just don't care. And it's called Children's Health Defense. And I think, what a great name for a front. Okay, and so then what's their game plan? Well, they want to scare people and raise money because you want to defend children, so you donate to them. The second one is called the McCullough Foundation. Now, foundations are supposed to be for charitable purposes. As a matter of fact, I set up private foundations in my law practice years ago for people that want to donate to charity. But this one doesn't seem to be for charitable purposes. And not only that, it doesn't seem to provide correct information. Every now and then, maybe they do, but in a lot of cases, it's like, wow, these people are in outer space. So that's problem child. I call problem children, number two. Then problem child number three, physicians for informed consent. Now, it starts off physicians like they're representing all the physicians. So I did a dive on it. They're not. They have a couple physicians and a bunch of anti-vaxxers for informed consent. Well, who doesn't want to have consent? So again, it sounds good on the first part that you look at, but then when you go underneath the table, it's like really a very scammy organization that is more wrong than right. But I'm not a medical doctor, so I watch the medical doctors. We've got some great ones on LinkedIn you should follow. I like Dr. Falk. I like Dr. Cox, and I certainly like the one you're going to see right now, Dr. Michael Patmos, who is actually a real medical doctor, board certified in internal medicine, plus has additional qualifications in infectious diseases. So we're bringing the star of the show, Dr. Michael Patmos, since you're on the road, but I don't know if you've been following LinkedIn. After a while, I just go, and we broadcast on LinkedIn. I mean, nothing wrong with freedom of speech, but after a while, can you please give me a break from these three organizations? But I'm not a medical doctor. I just listen to what you guys say, and they just don't seem right. They seem very scammy to me. So what are your thoughts?
Good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm still outside. I've been outside the United States now for 3 weeks. And it's always, for those of you who haven't traveled much, I urge you, travel, get out of the United States for a while, see and hear from other parts of the world. It's an eye opener. Mark Twain said that travel is the antidote to hatred and bigotry, and he was absolutely right. So these three organizations that you mentioned are very important because Children's Health Defense is a global organization. It's Robert Kennedy's organization. That's his organization. He was the CEO of Children's Health Defense for many years. He has apparently stepped back a little bit from day-to-day operations now that he's Secretary of Health and Human Services. But when you think Children's Health Defense, you have to think of Robert F. Kennedy. That is his organization. And a very important part of their mission is to support anti-vax litigation. By the way, there's a whole bunch of noise in the background. There's somebody's keyboarding or something. So Children's Health Defense also is part of the anti-vax litigation effort that was very successful. Recently, Kennedy and his team got a $50 million settlement with Pfizer over the human papillomavirus vaccine, over something that it doesn't even cause. It's $50 million is a nuisance settlement nowadays in big pharma. So that's what Children's Health Defense is. It's a front for an organization that is looking to sue and recover money for alleged vaccine injury. The McCullough Foundation is very interesting. It's run by Peter McCullough. Dr. McCullough is a defrocked and barred physician who was thrown out of his hospital in Texas and also had his board certification withdrawn by the American Board of Internal Medicine. But the Texas Medical Board still hasn't corrected his profile. It still shows him as board certified, even though he lost his board certification. And his thing is, it's basically he's making money with the McCullough Foundation. He doesn't really have a practice. He doesn't have a job. So his job now is promoting and selling spike detox and other scam therapies through the McCullough Foundation. And then finally, in Physicians for Informed Consent, which you mentioned, yes, that's an organization comprised largely of non-physicians or anti-vaxxers. The doctors who are involved with Physicians for Informed Consent are largely concierge doctors in places like Newport Beach, California, where you have to have a Lamborghini or they don't even let you in the town. It's a very high end. And so concierge practices cater to wealthy people who don't want to go through mainstream medicine. So it's a perfect marketing strategy. Be an anti-vaxxer. It gets you a lot of exposure. You can be an anti-establishment, a warrior for truth and blah, blah, blah. That can attract patients to your concierge practice. So those are the three main groups. And you're right, they're sources of misinformation. These organizations are not only sources of misinformation, they are also responsible directly and indirectly for harm to human beings. I mean, they're hurting people because of the impact they've had on public health. And I'll give you a perfect example is what we're talking about right now is the cyclospora outbreak. The largest outbreak of cyclospora ever in the United States is happening right now. Thousands of cases, people with explosive diarrhea that goes on for weeks or months. And we don't understand, why it's happening. And I'll get back to cyclospora in a second and tie this in. Cyclospora, the reason we have a cyclospora thing right now is because of the efforts of Trump and Kennedy and Bhattacharya to gut public health. This is what happens when you gut public health. You get cyclospora outbreaks and other cyclo. Can somebody mute their laptop in the background? It sounds like a chainsaw. Anyhow, what I wanted to just briefly touch on was I had the opportunity in the last 3 weeks to travel extensively. I've been to the other side of the world, and I stayed at a place where everybody eats family style. And I met people, dozens of people from Europe, Germany, Scotland, Dubai, Great Britain, New Zealand, Australia, Fiji, India, all over the world. And we had dinner together and lunch and breakfast every day, a group of 20 people, and we had wonderful conversation. And to hear what these people had to say from all around the world was very stunning. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Pew Research Foundation published a paper that showed that in 36 countries around the world, perception of the United States has really taken a hit. The United States is not well received right now. And most people around the world feel a huge majority of people around the world feel that the United States is going the wrong direction, that we have a crazy leader, and the United States is not viewed positively. Well, I heard that. You can read the study, but I can tell you, I heard that personally from every single person I spoke to from all over the world, from Scotland to Fiji and everywhere in between. The United States we are not perceived well around the world because of what we're doing. Because of Trump and his policies. And it's really bad. And the words of a German doctor I met stayed with me. This doctor said, in Europe, especially in Germany, we know the ravages of war. We've seen war in our backyard twice in the last century. And, it's only been 80 years that we've had peace. And it's been a good run, but we're preparing now for that to end. What she was saying, this is a highly educated German doctor, is that in Germany, the sentiment is the United States is gone. We are no longer an ally. We're no longer part of NATO. We have abandoned Europe, and we are now allowing Putin to do what he wants to do. And in Germany, they see it. They recognize this. They've lived this before. They know what it looks like, and they see Russia coming. They see Russia taking Ukraine, and they see Russia now making moves against Poland and so on and so forth. So the people in Europe are very, very alarmed. And this German doctor said to me, we can't believe the United States, of all the allies that we had, we thought the United States was always going to be an ally, would always be part of NATO. And now we've lost faith. We don't trust the United States. We're going on without the United States. So Europe, this is what this doctor was telling me, Europe is moving on without us because they don't trust us, they don't like us, they don't believe us. And this is how much damage. So when you hear America is respected like never before, that is propaganda. Go outside the United States and you will hear the truth. Now, back to cyclospora in the last couple of minutes. Since I've started heading back to the United States, I've been reading about cyclospora. We've got thousands of cases. Cyclospora is a protozoan parasite. It's not a bacteria. It's not a virus. It's a protozoa. And it exists only in humans. It's a fecal oral, so it's spread when someone contaminates usually irrigation water with sewage, with fecal material. And that fecal material sits in the environment. It takes about 2 weeks for it to sporulate. And then if it gets in the water and it gets sprayed on lettuce or raspberries or whatever the produce might be, you now go buy that and these little spores are on the food. You can't wash them off. You can't kill them. You have to heat it to 158 degrees to kill it. So it's really hard to treat. Just washing your head of lettuce isn't good enough. And so people all across the United States now, widespread outbreak, are getting this disease. About 150 people have been hospitalized. No one has died yet. It's usually not a fatal disease, but it's not fun having explosive diarrhea for weeks at a time. It is treatable, though, with antibiotics. But here's where it ties back to Kennedy and Trump. Kennedy and Bhattacharya have had, you know what they've had to say about the cyclospora outbreak? Nada, zero, nothing. They don't have a comment on it because they don't even understand what it is. They don't know what to say, so they've said nothing. And CDC has been gutted. They don't have the staff. They don't have the personnel. They don't have the wherewithal to really deal with this the way they used to. So we're seeing yet another infectious disease dominating the headlines. If it's not measles, it's tetanus or whooping cough. We've got Ebola, a significant outbreak in Africa. We've had all kinds of, and now we have cyclospora, and it's all part of the same problem. It all has the root cause: the attack on science and the attack on public health, particularly as it relates to infectious diseases. See, the reality is, most diseases are infectious diseases. And if you go back in history, what most people die of were infectious diseases. We did such a good job for 100 years with vaccines and antibiotics controlling and reducing death from infectious diseases that people today don't even know what they are. And they worry about, cancer and heart disease, which is very appropriate to worry about. But the reality is 100 years ago, people didn't live long enough to die of cancer or heart disease. They were all dying of infectious diseases. And as soon as you turn your back on infectious diseases, they are right there. They never go away. They're just hiding in the background. And as soon as you ignore them, they come back. And how do you ignore them? Doing exactly what Bhattacharya and Kennedy and Trump have done, which is just gut and defund our CDC. So anyhow, that's the story of 3 weeks of international travel and how the United States is flushing itself down the drain. One last comment about cyclospora. Everybody's focused on, is it the lettuce? Is it the raspberries? Is it the strawberries? It doesn't matter. It's the fact that farm workers defecate in the fields. That's the problem. And we don't have, if you have a farm with fewer than 11 workers, you don't have to even provide a potty for them, a porta potty. It has to be 11 workers. And then you have to have one porta potty for every 20 workers. Well, what happens if one of your farm workers has diarrhea and you don't have a porta potty? They defecate in the field. And that is how you get contamination of irrigation water. That's how this spreads. Ultimately, the cyclospora outbreak, it's not, polite to talk about it this way, but ultimately it all gets back to sanitation and irrigation and defecation on farmland. That's where it starts. That's how it starts. So we have to redouble our efforts on public health and sanitation and recognition of infectious diseases. And that means we need to oust these quacks, Kennedy, Bhattacharya. We got to get all these people out of there, and we've got to diminish the influence of Children's Self-Defense and the McCullough Foundation and Physicians for Informed Consent. And with that, I'll be back in the United States soon to harass all the anti-vaxxers.
See, that's the problem. Right now, I live in Barcelona. I don't have that problem, but I go to the U.S. twice. I'll be back in October, and I just go, man, am I going to a third world country? I mean, seriously, from the European Union, which has nearly 450 million people, to the United States that has 330 million. But we also do have our people like Rick Rosner, who's joining us. He's a member of the Mega Society, and a lot of people don't even know what that is. I did way before I met him. And he may have some comments regarding.
Well, I saw that same Pew study, and this repeats a study they do every 4 years. And international approval of America was bad during Trump's first administration, but it recovers quickly under Biden. So all we need to, it's stronger disapproval than the U.S. itself. So all we have to do is get somebody new in there 2.5 years from now, and we can become friends with the world again.
Oh boy, would that be a wonderful thing? My fear is that what if we don't? What if we don't make a change? What if we end up with this same regime in power for the next 2 years and then 4 years after that? I think we're in trouble.
Well, it can't be Trump, and anybody is preferable to Trump.
Yeah, ABT, anybody but Trump.
But you talked about misinformation. It also crowds out information, that if your head is full of garbage, there's no room for the good stuff. For instance, a story today on phase 3 trials beginning for an Alzheimer's drug that can get past the blood-brain barrier, because your brain has protections in your circulatory system against any old garbage getting into your brain. So drugs need to get past that barrier into your brain, and this stuff, once it's in there, seems to really fight amyloid plaque, which is what chokes out your neurons. It seems to be super effective. So if you're in your 50s and you have, your parents, your grandparents, uncles, that there's a huge risk of Alzheimer's in your family, by the time you're in your prime, years for this to start, it may not be a problem in the 2030s.
You're right, Rick. And these new drugs, there's several of them, but the one you're referring to, these are monoclonal antibodies targeted against amyloid plaque. And it's this plaque that builds up in the brain that's believed to be, part of the pathogenesis of Alzheimer's disease. Why we develop the plaque is not clear. It may just be some cellular debris from inflammation or whatever. But this treatment is effective at preventing the plaque from being deposited, which slows the progression of Alzheimer's. It's a big breakthrough because Alzheimer's, we have a wave, we have the silver tsunami of seniors coming with Alzheimer's. It's a big problem.
So plaque it chokes out. So every neuron in your brain averages about 1,000 connections to other neurons, and a plaque gets in there and it chokes off these connections. And eventually, like your neurons, more and more neurons die. When they die, the cell, I guess, explodes and it barfs out a bunch more plaque, and it's a cascading effect. And if you can catch it early, you can hold it off, for decades if we're lucky, until you have time to be taken out by something else.
You'll never hear a neurologist stoop so low as to use a gastrointestinal analogy for a neurological disease. But that was good, Rick.
Hey, Dr. Patman, just really quickly, you said that it could be the same regime and that they kind of glossed over that. But what are you hearing about Vance in terms of his thoughts around medicine and things along those lines? I know that he wrote that famous book and everything like that, but I don't know whether he is anything other than the hillbilly elegy in terms of his own medical knowledge and his things around that medical regime, as you just called it, and everything. If we were to get Vance, would Vance just be a continuation of Trump?
I think he would be, and I can tell you that the conversations that I had with people were mostly around Trump. But Vance is not considered any bright shining genius. And in fact, he doesn't even seem to understand Watergate. His comments about Watergate have been pretty ridiculous. Of course, he wasn't even alive then. So he doesn't know what happened. Watergate was no big deal, and it would be gone in 24 hours in the news cycle, and Nixon was set up. I mean, this is a burglary, So anyhow, I don't think Vance has any credibility. I mean, the guy came from nowhere, wrote a book, and served less than one term in the Senate because he got pushed in there, funded by Peter Thiel. And next thing you know, he's vice president. He has no qualifications. He's got certainly no qualifications in anything having to do with science and health and medicine and anything like that. I think he's just another. He hated Trump. He's basically a sycophant. He'll do whatever Trump wants him to because he's just seeking power. I hope to God Vance doesn't end up in power because I think he's a kid. To me, he's a kid who doesn't know anything.
So and he is, as you said, he's a creature of tech billionaires. He was funded, and his buddies with Thiel and other, and the tech bros, they believe in science for themselves, maybe
Right.
not so much for other people. But Silicon Valley's full of billionaires who are getting exotic experimental treatments they want to live forever. They don't care if you live into your 80s.
Oh yeah, Elon Musk loves science as long as it promotes, his industries where he has all the stock and it becomes a trillionaire. So it's only science that benefits, their personal agendas.
Yeah, their own personal agendas and everything like that. So that's very much the case that they're out there to get their personal agendas going and all along those lines. Y'all were talking about plaque earlier and everything like that. I think people forget the importance of basic care. So I was wondering if you can speak to our audience around that, because people, I think, sometimes forget about basic oral care and other cares that are very much important, because the plaque can build up and then cause all kinds of problems and everything like that. So can you speak
So,
to
all right, this is a really important thing, and it's really simple. A country, there's no wiser investment than any country can have in just providing basic health care for everyone. I'm not talking about, heart transplants and bone. I'm talking about basic health care, primary care for every human being. It's the smartest thing you can do from a financial standpoint, if you want to be just a bean counter about it, there's no better investment than everybody having primary care, because you prevent people from getting sicker, and then they end up in a hospital. And once you cross that gate and you go into the hospital, you're looking at thousands of dollars a day. If you can keep people out of the hospital, provide good primary care, keep those diabetics under control, immunize, vaccinate, treat things before they get bad, manage patients, their hypertension, whatever they may have, manage it as an outpatient. You prevent the inpatient stay, and that saves you money. When you cut people off from basic health care, you're not saving money. You're actually increasing your spend, because they're just going to get sick. They're going to go to the emergency room with a blood sugar of 500 and in DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. They're going to need to be in the ICU, and they're going to cost tens of thousands of dollars for even a short stay in ICU. The smartest thing any country can do is provide basic care for everybody. The United States is the outlier around the world. And it's an example of why people think the United States is crazy. You think it's the greatest country in the world? We don't even provide health care for everybody. Other countries do. Poor little countries like Belize provides health care for every resident. But the United States can't do that.
Here's a list of you're talking basic care, basic things you can do to hold off Alzheimer's until this medicine hits the shelf in 10 years, because trials take a long time, especially with a gradually developing disease. Anyway, 5 things to do: exercise, mental and physical, walk, do crosswords, do stuff that keeps your brain active, don't smoke, quit if you already do, cut back on alcohol, healthy diet, get your hearing checked. My wife she made me get a hearing aid because she saw her mom. If you leave hearing loss uncorrected for long enough, your brain loses the ability to process sound. And that is highly associated with dementia and Alzheimer's.
Those are all good points, Dr. Rosner. Great job.
I just live with somebody who's kind of an Alzheimer's sheriff. She's seen it devastate her mom. She doesn't want it happening to us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Everything. Hey, Dr. Patmos, I was watching one of those old TV shows, and they brought up this notion that I had heard before, but I was not sure if it was factual. But it was like Criminal Intent or one of those shows. I think it was either Criminal Intent or Criminal Minds and everything like that. But they were bringing up this notion. Now that I think about it, was Law and Order, Criminal Intent. But they were bringing this notion of schizophrenia being inherited and everything like that. So I think one of the characters, and actually I knew his dad because his dad was an actor here in Durham and everything like that. But I just was wondering, is that something that is inherited, or is that one of those mythologies that exists out there?
No, well, first of all, I hate getting questions when I can't check the latest information. So I'll just wing it off the top of my head. My understanding of schizophrenia is that it's a multifactorial thing. I believe there is some risk, increased familial risk, but there's also a virus that you can get that infects the central nervous system that causes schizophrenia. So schizophrenia is multiple different kinds of things, and I don't think it has any one cause. It is obviously a psychiatric disease. It has complicated pharmacology, and the molecular biology is very interesting. Some drugs, in the 1970s when LSD was being used, people would get intoxicated on LSD and they would become schizophrenic, meet all the criteria for schizophrenia just for a temporary period of time, though, until the drug wore off. So it's a very complicated thing, but I believe there is some genetic. Rick, do you have any other information?
Yeah, I just read an article in the New Yorker a few months ago, where there are conditions that mimic, as you were talking about with LSD, that mimic schizophrenia. And if you're lucky enough to not really have schizophrenia, which is a tough disease, but there are some inflammatory conditions that make it look as if you have schizophrenia. And if you're lucky enough for somebody to try hitting you with antibiotics, in maybe 4% of the cases of schizophrenia, it's not schizophrenia. And if you can shut down the inflammation, people can return to normal mental function.
Well, I remember, I forget the name of the virus, but there is a neurotropic virus that can cause schizophrenia, that's just because that's something anybody can catch, So I mean that notion.
And there's the idea of crazy cat lady. There's this disease carried by cats, toxoplasmosis,
yes.
parasitic disease. If it gets into a human brain, that's why pregnant women aren't supposed to handle cats.
Right.
But if it gets in your brain, it can predispose you to schizophrenia. So you probably don't want to have more than 3 cats.
And be careful when you clean the cat box.
Something to leave our viewers with. Be careful about the cats. In the meantime, we want to thank Dr. Michael Patmos, who's board certified in internal medicine and also in infectious diseases, additional qualifications, which, by the way, does kill a lot of people. And Rick Rosner is a member of the Mega Society. If you don't know what that is, look it up. And in the meantime, we'll see you next week on Medicine and Science, only on the Pod TV network. Take care. Bye.